Okay, everyone, good morning. We're going to get started. I think I'm going to get ready with my camera. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to October's Borough Board meeting. Before we begin the meeting, I'd like to go around and have everyone introduce themselves for the benefit of those who are guests and the different presenters here today. So if we can start with our Deputy Borough President.
Good morning, Joseph Garba, Deputy Borough President.
APS Community Board 8.
Morris Chairman, Borough President's Office.
Christine Verte, Community Board 4.
P.D. Lee, Community Board 3.
Vicky Barbera, Community Board 5.
Ford Winfield, Community Board 6.
Susan Cole, Community Board 1, for Catherine McVeigh Hughes.
Mark Laser, Community Board 7, filling in for
Sandra.
Whoever it is.
Thursday.
And I'm the Assemblyman Dick Godfrey.
Aljan Hafai Bonilla, Deputy Borough President.
Stephanie Arroyo, representing Melissa Montevidito's office.
Marty Weidman, Goddard Riverside, SR Law Project.
Sarah Desmond, Housing Conservation Coordinators.
Molly Banks, Councilmember Corey Johnson's office.
Patricia Saccarelli, Manhattan Borough President's Office.
I'm Marty Agnes, I work for Assemblyman Godfrey, who's going to be doing a presentation today.
Jessica Mates from Borough President's Office.
Lucille Songhai, Borough President's office.
Jerry Johnson, Land Use Council to Madison Capital for 19 East Houston Street.
Madison Capital, developer of 19 East Houston Street.
Ben Klein, I work at Madison Capital.
Robert Marino, New York City Transit.
Joseph Chan, MTA Real Estate.
Luciana Warner, EDC.
John Corcoran, EDC.
Hardy Adasco, EDC.
Brian Lafferty, Manhattan Borough President's Office.
Adele Bartlett, Manhattan Borough President's Office.
Jim Karras, Manhattan Borough President's Office.
Anyone else? Okay. Today's meeting is also a public hearing on EDC action at 19 East Houston Street later on in the Borough Board meeting. First, if we can, first order of business is the adoption of the October 16, 2014 Borough Board agenda, which you have before you. Motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next order of business is the adoption of the September 18, 2014 Borough Board minutes, which you all should have the email to you. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. First, we have a presentation from Assembly Member Godfrey on some legislation that he'd like to present to you. There's a great interest to community boards. I want to strengthening SLA resos with strong stipulations for enforceability. And the next one is the substation placements and the community input on that. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. Good to be here. In my office, we were going through my collection of bills in preparation for reintroducing them for the upcoming two-year legislative session. Perhaps presumptuously assuming that I will be re-elected to serve there. It pays to plan ahead. And a couple of bills that I've been carrying for a long time, I thought it would be useful to talk about with the Borough Board, because they do relate very directly to issues that our community boards deal with. An issue that you deal with probably practically every meeting for some of the boards, and another one that comes up a little more rarely. The more rare one deals with the siting of electric substations, which are the facilities that take electricity from large transmission lines and with giant transformers step the current down to be sent out in a neighborhood through the distribution system. These are not power plants that generate electricity, but they can be pretty bulky things. They're not particularly attractive. They the transformers can produce noise. Every so often there's a fire. And there are people who are very concerned about the concentration of electromagnetic energy that emanates from huge transformers. The State Public Service Commission has jurisdiction over the electrical generating system and approves power plants that generate electricity. It approves, with public hearings, major transmission lines. There is no formal approval process, certainly not anything that involves public hearings for substations. And as far as I know, they are also exempt from city zoning. And this bill arose a few years ago when we had a couple of substation siting issues in parts of my district, and people were pretty frustrated that there was really no opportunity, no formal opportunity to present the neighborhood case or to raise objections. And so this bill would add substations to the same section in the law that covers electric transmission lines and gas transmission lines, so that it would be subject to a formal process. The second bill also has a fairly long history, and with the SLA kind of an up and down history. Many community boards, maybe all of them in Manhattan at least, commonly when a bar or other on-premises consumption licensee is coming before the board, will recommend certain conditions for the granting of that license. Conditions about hours of operation, sound proofing, equipment to be added, and the like. Often the SLA will add these provisions when they approve a license, which is good. Although there have been eras in recent years when the SLA has said, well, we really don't have authority to do that. And there is also constant questioning as to whether those provisions, if they are put into the SLA's approval, are really enforceable. There have been times when the SLA has said that if you can prove that the owner agreed to put these provisions in his or her application fraudulently, intending to violate them at the time they proposed them, then we could punish for that fraud. But if they're in the license, sometimes the SLA says, well, if it's not in the statute, we can't really enforce it. And sometimes the SLA has gone through periods when they do say they can enforce them. So this bill would simply add to all of the many provisions in the alcohol beverage control law that provide for on-premises licenses of various kinds, specific language that says that the SLA can add terms and conditions that either implement provisions of the statute or that the SLA concludes are necessary to protect the public interest and convenience. And those provisions in that license would then be fully enforceable as if they were in the law or the regs. I think it would be a really empowering thing for communities if that language were very clearly in the statute. I think it would significantly shift the ground for a lot of our communities in dealing with bars and clubs that can sometimes be a problem. So those are the two bills. I'd be happy to take questions, and I'd love to have your support.
Hi, Mark Blaze, Committee Board 7. The stipulations of the change that you're talking about, would that be after they were granted their license? I mean, we go back to the SLA and say,
No, it would be put into the license at the time it is either granted or renewed. So we wouldn't be changing the rules on a licensee in the middle of their operation. I think there could be real, almost constitutional problems doing that. But at either the granting or the periodic renewal, that could be done.
well, it's not being done already? I mean, I think that we can put stipulations in if we know that.
Boards do that, but there are, depending on the climate at the SLA and the climate in the courts from time to time, those stipulations are either enforced or regarded as being, just a gesture. This would clearly nail down that the SLA has the legal authority to make these a binding part of, an enforceable part of the license.
My understanding is that if you put it into the method of operation, which is what we do most of the time, those stipulations are based on the method of operation. And the SLA has told us that once it goes into the method of operation on our part, it then goes into the file under their application as part of their method of operation, and it is enforceable. So is this in addition to that, or is this, I always understood that it isn't enforceable in the last maybe, I would say 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, well, that's the key. We are happily in a period in time when the SLA is regarding these things, these stipulations, as something they can do and that they can enforce. But there have been, it took a long time to get them to migrate to that opinion, and I'm just concerned that, they could, with a couple of new appointees, tomorrow migrate to another opinion. And a court somewhere in the state could say, we don't know what makes you think that, but if it's not in the statute, it isn't.
So this kind of legitimizes exactly.
This would nail down, would clearly authorize what they have been doing in recent years.
Kristen?
Yes. Part of this clarification will also include that the method of operation would be posted on the internet or not? It's like a major issue we have, and the police and everybody, is that there's no place where you can research that. It has to be a piece of paper or a resolution somewhere, and I think it would be tremendously helpful. I mean, they have a database, and just making a link to a document would be something so simple to do that it is in 2014 unconceivable that they are not doing it.
Yeah.
There was grants bill.
Excuse me?
There was grants bill.
To put it on the internet.
Yeah, well, what this bill would do is put the provisions in the license,
Yes,
not in a side filing.
right.
If the license, wherever the license is accessible, this language would then be there. If licenses are not online, that probably ought to be a freestanding bill of its own, so that, a proposal to require that they be online may well be more easily enacted than this, or vice versa, and you don't really know what bill is gonna suddenly become either easy or difficult. But you said Brad has a bill to put them online?
It was defeated. It didn't come, it didn't bring it up last year. He wanted, instead of having to foil the information, he asked that these stipulations and mitigations were put online. And it was introduced into the Senate, and I thought it was an easy one to pass. It didn't get presented even, so.
I mean, I would think I mean, it's just, if the license is not online, that's kind of,
Not online.
it's certainly wrong. I was gonna say bizarre, but, you know, there are many state agencies that still use quill pens, so.
So can I just ask a question?
Yes, David.
I'm sorry, I came a little late, you may have got it. So all the agreed stipulations and other agreements that the community board makes with an applicant and accepted thereof by the SLA will be printed on the license?
Anything that the SLA agrees to,
Right.
yes, they could then put in the license, yeah.
Because now, you know, they say the license is not big enough sometimes. It's such a silly thing, but they say the license doesn't have enough room to accommodate many of the stipulations that they agreed to, so they just pick a few. I mean, it's crazy, but.
Yeah,
that's
their
what it is.
concept of the license is the piece of paper that goes on the wall,
Right.
and that's their,
Yeah.
their mental
Mhm.
set, which it's not what it is. The license should be, I mean, like the elevator record, right? It says, okay,
Sure.
find it in the,
Yeah,
but so this whole issue about the size of the paper becomes the driver for everything.
And so the police can't enforce hours or the windows have to be
That's
closed.
not there.
Well, lots of stuff that, you know, we call a local precinct, happy to go down, but they don't know what to enforce because it's not on
Published.
it's
physical
not in the
license.
little.
It's not
picture
right.
frame
So
on
I
it.
don't know why the
Yeah.
license can't be
Yeah,
8.5 by 14 if it had to be, you know.
So the
Yeah,
issue
you
of
know,
the
it-
size of the paper may be the major obstacle to your law.
yeah. I mean, if you get a license as an electrician or a nurse or a physician, you get I think a little piece of paper that says you're a licensed nurse, but there are books and books of
What does that mean?
requirements that go with that.
That's a big problem.
You know,
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's
the
just
the
easy.
notion that the terms of a license are limited to
Right,
what's on the card that you can put in your wallet is
yeah.
ridiculous.
The 24th precinct on the Upper West Side actually has a posting of those things in the precinct.
Uh-huh.
So they look at that in terms of what time they close, what
Oh,
time
great.
they open, stuff like that. It was used to close a venue down, it was very troublesome,
Mhm.
but it was effective.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I'm gonna check in with Brad about the online posting bill, because that ought to be relatively straightforward.
Okay, should have been.
Is this an issue that the community boards have time to go back to their community? So the chairs have time to go back to the community boards on for original resolution?
Sure, I mean, our timetable is we reconvene January 7th. Committees begin functioning sometime in January. This could be taken up by the Assembly Committee on Economic Development anytime from January to June. So certainly the sooner the better, but we've certainly got ample time for community board consideration.
Could those be sent to us electronically to all the boards, and then we can just assemble?
The information that was just
Yes.
distributed?
Yes.
by hand?
Yes.
Yes, we could.
Okay.
Okay.
This information has been provided electronically.
Yeah.
Community boards.
Is there a same as in the Senate?
Excuse me?
I'm asking, is there a same as in the Senate?
Pretty sure, Marty,
Yeah,
do
I
you,
think there is.
do you have
We'll
the-
check. I don't know where the number is, but we'll check.
It might be on the printout that you have.
I gave them all out. I don't have any in front of me.
No, it's not
No,
on,
it
it's
says
not
same
on,
as
it's not on,
blank.
it's not on the printer.
Okay. We will check in on that and see if we don't have a sponsor at the moment, we'll see if Brad wants to carry it. Sometimes you have a Senate sponsor and then either, for one reason or another, that senator disappears, either because he or she got elected to the city council or the courts intervened.
Doesn't look like there is.
I think Brad's safe.
Yes, Brad is, I'm pretty confident, Brad is safe, yes, and he's certainly not gonna run for the city council for a while. If ever.
No further comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation on the briefing on illegal hotels and SROs. If we can have Sarah and Marty come up here, and our Deputy General Counsel, Doug Bartlett, and come up as well.
Could have had Assemblymember Godfrey did the briefing as we worked on this issue at Water
Dick?
Thank you for making time for us this morning. My name is Sarah Desmond. I'm with Housing Conservation Coordinators, and in another hat, I also sit on a community board with Christine Boucher.
I'm Marty Weichman with Governor Riverside's SRO Law Project.
So both of our organizations are legal services organizations that serve the west side of Manhattan. And we first learned about the issue of illegal hotels back in almost a decade ago, back in 2005, when we heard about it from our perspective of tenants coming in with quality of life and safety issues. So tenants would come into our office seeking assistance, saying, you know, we have all these strangers that have, that are now renting the apartments next door. They're tourists that we see on a, 3 days to a week. They come and go. We don't know who to expect staying there. We don't know when we run into someone in the hallway if in fact they belong there, or should we be concerned about our safety. We also heard about a number of quality of life issues where tenants, you'd have too many people put into one apartment. They would be 20-year-olds that were in New York for a good time, which didn't necessarily jive with the people who had to get up for work in the morning in the apartment next door. So we, and then there are issues that we'll talk about at length, but of people like palming the buzzer, issues about people leaving the doors propped open. So there are generally quality of life and safety concerns. And so we soon realized, though, that those quality of life issues soon evolved into an affordable housing issue as well. The tenants would say, my neighbors moved out, they're now using this unit for short-term rentals, and I no longer have a permanent next-door neighbor. It used to be a rent-stabilized unit, it is no longer. So our organizations came together with the West Side Neighborhood Alliance and with a number of the elected officials that represent the area. Borough President Gail Brewer was first and foremost among that as well, of the elected officials who joined on to the campaign. And we formed a working group to address the illegal hotel issue. And that working group has now, it's now increased to 40 groups that have signed on to the campaign. We have a kind of one-page fact sheet on the issue that I'll hand out. And the groups that have signed on to the campaign are on the back. And the elected officials, we have elected officials that have joined the campaign. Many of them are represented here today, and they're from citywide, all around, all but 5 boroughs of Manhattan, right? All 5 boroughs of the city.
Yeah, so just to speak a little bit about the law, about which kind of is what we look to when we talk about illegal hotels. So an illegal hotel is the short-term rental of an apartment or an SRO unit in a residential building, so for less than 30 days. These are what we call permanent residential buildings. And these are in buildings that have 3 or more units. And the law that we look to is the state multiple dwelling law. And since its inception in 1929, the city has always interpreted a permanent residential building that it had to be occupied for a period of 30 days or longer. And as Sarah said, we did start seeing this illegal hotel activity, particularly on the west side of Manhattan, about a decade ago. And what we were seeing was a lot of these larger landlords renting up a lot of their units in their building, renting them on TripAdvisor, different online platforms. And so what happened was the city actually commenced litigation against 3 SRO owners on the Upper West Side. And they sought a preliminary injunction to stop the landlord from doing these short-term rentals, which they obtained. The landlord then appealed to the appellate division, which was the first appellate level. And while everyone kind of thought that the appellate division would reverse, the appellate division not only reversed, they went much further, and they actually reinterpreted what the long-standing interpretation by the city had been of the multiple dwelling law and what a permanent residential building actually meant. So that decision actually allowed landlords or operators to rent up to 49% of the units in their building on a short-term basis. So it really turned everything on its head in the city. Instead of appealing that decision, all of the legislators got together and decided that what really needed to happen was new legislation. So that's what happened in 2010. What we call the illegal hotel law was passed, which clarified the multiple dwelling law and what a permanent residential building is and how it must be occupied for 30 days or longer. In addition to that, actually, the borough president, when she was then council member, she passed a fines bill which increased the fines, because prior to her fine bill, the fines were really just a cost of doing business. It was a one-time fine of about $800. So it really, there was no disincentive for the landlords to stop doing this. So the fine bill that was passed really increased the fines, and especially for subsequent violations of illegal hotel use, it put it into an even higher category of violation. So it's really provided a disincentive now for landlords. So, you know, like we talked about, kind of who are these illegal hotel operators? You know, it used to be much more of just the landlords or these third-party operators which would rent out multiple units in a building. And, you know, over the past few years, we've seen the onset of Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, all of these bigger online platforms. Obviously, Airbnb is the biggest among them, and I don't know if most of you have seen the New York Times article this morning, very exciting. The AG's report has really, you know, confirmed what we all believed, and, you know, kind of the impact that we've seen on the city. 3/4 of the units that are rented on Airbnb are illegal. So that's huge. And this is just like a big, you know, this is kind of the beginning really of the actual data that we will have to kind of counter what Airbnb has put out in the press with their millions and millions of dollars. They claim that really these are just New Yorkers who are trying to make ends meet, but it's clearly not true, and now we have the data to point to. So a lot of the findings by the AG's office are really great and very damaging to Airbnb, and, you know, we look forward to seeing the entire report. And hopefully additional litigation as well. That's one thing. The illegal hotel use in the city is enforced by the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement. And they have brought litigation over the past several years to crack down on the bigger illegal hotel operators. And they've really made some very good law and some precedent, because they've also used a cause of action that claims consumer fraud, because these operators are they're advertising online, and these are actually unlawful units.
So, so there are a number of reasons that we're concerned about this issue and why we think that illegal hotels are bad for the city and bad for our communities. First and foremost is that by taking these units out from rent regulation and from just removing them from the housing market, you are exacerbating the already tight housing market that we have in the city and the housing crisis. So for example, the Attorney General's report found that 72% of the units that are on Airbnb are rented for less than 30 days. And that right now there's something about 20,000 units that are for rent on Airbnb. In the markets where Airbnb has the most rentals, you see a corresponding increase in the rents in those areas. So we saw it on the west side. They're now seeing it in areas out in Brooklyn where new to Airbnb. There was an article that was done by Gothamist that drew the correlation between the number of hosts and the number of rentals in the community, and the significant two-figure rent hikes that were going on in those communities as well. You have the quality of life concerns that we already addressed and the safety issues that are, that come with bringing largely unvetted strangers into a building and sharing them with permanent residential tenants. And and by renting their units for less than 30 days, tenants that participate in this are unwittingly putting themselves at risk for eviction. When they sign up to post their units on sites like Airbnb, they don't know that, they may not know at that time that they're risking, they're violating their lease, that they could be sued, that they could find themselves fighting a court case to keep their apartments, and that many of them, many people will actually leave their apartments and will actually not contest the court case. So we've seen that just the illegal use has unwittingly pushed tenants out of their apartments, that we have this big turnover in tenants in buildings, and we've actually seen on the west side buildings that have been largely taken over for illegal hotel use. I think in the Attorney General's report that, according to the Times report this morning, they said there were a handful of buildings in which 60% or more of the units were actually rented permanently as hotel use. And, we know, I can count probably 6 of them just off, I could give you addresses of them, where we know that's happening on the west side. So, on the other side of the coin, there's a reason that you have the hotel codes, there's a reason that you have the fire codes. You have tenants coming into the city, they're staying in a building that they're largely unfamiliar with, they don't know, they know how to get into the building, they know how to get up to their room. They don't know if there's a case of fire, how they leave that building, other than the elevator through which they came in. The fire codes in New York City were developed in response to other crises that have happened in other parts of the country, where large numbers of tourists were killed in fires because they didn't know how to exit a building properly in the case of a heavy smoke or a fire condition. You have accessibility standards that need to be met by hotels, which are not met by illegal operators. You don't have, it has to be wheelchair accessible, it has to be accessible to people with disabilities. People renting individually don't meet those standards in a large number of the cases. And there's no recourse for the tourists who are coming to the city if the apartment does not meet their expectations. They've signed on to say that they'll stay in this unit, they get there, they get handed the keys, they walk into the unit, it doesn't meet their expectations, there's no front desk to go downstairs to complain to. So they end up either trying to get their money back, they end up bothering their neighbors, trying to figure out where they should book next and how to go about it, to borrow the internet. So we're seeing all sorts of complaints that come out of these situations, both from the tenant perspective, but also from the tourist perspective.
I think it's also important to know what is not an illegal hotel or what is not unlawful under the law. If you have an apartment and you rent out a unit or a room in your apartment, that's not illegal. Airbnb would like you to think it's illegal, and their ads, show these hosts who are just lovely and wake up in the morning and make pancakes for, their guests in the morning. That's not illegal, because the host is there. The host is present in the unit. Also, just to speak a little bit about Airbnb and kind of their efforts to undermine the law and to get some type of concession. They have been very active in Albany to try to get legislation passed that would allow certain rentals of permanent residential buildings of under 30 days. There were actually 2 bills that were proposed up in Albany last year, both of which would have had devastating impacts on the rent stabilization laws if they were passed. Neither did go anywhere, fortunately. However, we do need to remain vigilant, and we will be up in Albany again this coming legislative session, particularly with the renewal of the rent laws coming up in June. We are particularly concerned that this would be a perfect opportunity for Airbnb and their lobbyists to sneak some type of compromising language into an omnibus bill that will most likely be passed to renew the laws.
So one of the things that's I think particularly note for Manhattan is that the AG's report came out, and in it they identified 3 communities in Manhattan that are where 40% of the revenue generated by Airbnb, so includes Lower East Side and Chinatown, Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, and the Greenwich Village and Soho are the areas that generate 40% of all of the revenue in Manhattan.
We are the targets.
So, we, obviously welcome any questions that you have, and we were hoping this would be, a discourse.
I just want to add one thing. As somebody who spends a great deal of time in the technology community, given my background, I'm on every panel, I'm on all the conferences. Tech community thinks this is their savior. We have been able to convince some of them that it's not, but they think this is part of the barter community. And it hits a lot of young people as the way to go in the future. Uber and others are similar in terms of their mind. The good news is I go around, are you rent stabilized? Are you rent stable? I go around and ask every single person on the panel. And I think they're beginning to understand. I want to thank the Attorney General because the tech community went after him. You don't see it in the papers, but they went after him big time. That he was against the technology expansion in the city of New York because he's upset with the housing situation. So I just want you to be aware of that because to me, this is helpful, the AG's report and this discussion, because it's fuel to be able to answer, this is the future, Gail, you don't understand. So I just want to be clear on that because you're going to get that from a lot of folks. And this report, I think, will help answer because most of the young people who are in the tech world are not either, not that they have a lot of money, they don't, but they're not stabilized because they have come in so late and then haven't had that experience. They have no idea. They don't know the difference between rent control, rent regulation, rent stabilization, or market. It's all the same thing. So I just want to throw that out because you're going to hear that a lot. And I also have friends who scream at me who have, I can't believe it, rent control department, they'll have every right. No, you don't have every right. So you're going to get a lot of pushback from people in the neighborhood, and I think this is incredibly important that way. But the tech community is very upset with Eric.
So, I think, and that's so true. And one of the other points is that Airbnb is just one of a whole host of sites. You have, VRBO, HomeAway, One Fine Stay, Booking.com, etc. And we see different sites advertised so that not necessarily something that's on One Fine Stay may not be on Airbnb as well.
Also, if any of the community boards would like a fuller presentation, we do have a PowerPoint where we can come and we'd be happy to give that to the community boards.
So, what should we do, I mean, two levels, what should we do as a community board and what should we do as individuals? So obviously, Hell's Kitchen used to be people carrying their luggage everywhere and, trying to get into a room. And so what should we do? I mean, is there a protocol to follow to say, it seems that there is an illegal operation there?
So first and foremost is 311. So if you know where the legal use is and you know the apartment, it's great to place a complaint. That complaint will then go over to the Office of Special Enforcement for follow-up, and it's what you call a 4A complaint for illegal use. And then the Office of Special Enforcement is run out of the mayor's office and is charged with the enforcement of the illegal hotel activity. So one of the things that we're asking is for increased enforcement.
I would say to answer that question, Kathleen McGee is a hero. She was head of that office, as you know, and she's now head of the same office in the Attorney General's office. That's why we have the report. Before her, it was Sherry Hyman, who's now head of Battery Park. These two women are giant attorneys and giant enforcers. They're gone. So I think the next thing we should do is pass a resolution at the community board asking for more enforcement. Because otherwise your 311 call, they have the staff there, but they need more staffing and more enforcement.
The average time that it takes an investigator or an inspector to go out to investigate a complaint is 4 to 6 weeks. So obviously that one particular tourist who was there is long gone. Hopefully there's another one there. It's also very labor intensive.
So that would, I know something very specific would be, we could draft a resolution for you if you want and circulate it, that you could tweet it.
Why don't you do that?
Tweet it.
Yeah.
Tweet
And
it.
if you would come to if we ask you, you come to our
Definitely.
one or two of the committees and make a presentation.
Certainly.
Are you able to give a breakdown of the different community boards? Because I see people's suitcases all the time walking through my community, and I'm not sure where they're coming from. You know, but a lot of tourists, so if it, you know, they had more information in terms of stats, maybe 10% in such a all or 5 communities.
We do have a listing of all the open violation, but it only dates back to March of this year, and we recently foiled all the newer violations up to date for actually the past 2 years, I think, so we're still waiting on that. We're expecting that data, so we can definitely share that with folks.
I know I keep interrupting, but let me just say one more thing, because this is a topic that I know well. The other thing to do would be, I think that Kathleen McGee would come also to the community board, so you should ask. The second thing is that I just want to give you the whole picture. So you also have the Brownstone community in Harlem. So some of them have been renting, and last night I'm in an event. Now I can't remember where I was, because that's what happens to me. But there were people from Brooklyn screaming at me, my friends, because they have big homes in Ditmas Park, and Department of Buildings has been going around to the back, see if anybody's there. So the same thing happens in Harlem and Brownstone. So we also, when you're doing, we will help you, but Kathleen McGee could help differentiate between the illegal Airbnb, etc., and then the Brownstone, which is a B&B, and so people are afraid that when we get rid of Airbnb, their Brownstone's program is going to go with it. It's complicated. Depends where you are. You got a zoning issue, you got a commercial usage issue, and then you have, you know, co-op. Well, that's I'm talking about the Brownstone. Co-op rules, you're not, forget it. Co-op and condos, you're taking your life in your hands when you're doing this.
And just to
So
clarify,
I just want to say, all of this is mixed up, and in Harlem, you're going to get a pushback. So you want to make sure you've got enough info at your meeting. Because last night I was like, people from Ditmas Park, I didn't even know I knew them. They were like, I came out of this had to do with nothing to do with housing. Like, 10 people come after me, it was your fault that in Ditmas Park, wait, hold on.
and just to clarify, there is no legal classification for a bed and breakfast in New York currently, so.
But if you're more than 100 feet from the avenue, you better check closely before you open a B&B.
One of, yeah, one other issue that Adele just reminded me of that you all should know about, but also could potentially weigh in on is the fire codes. Back in December of 2013, there was an amendment to the fire code in an 840 some odd page document that was passed by the city council. There were some changes that some amendments that actually changed the way that the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement can write violations for illegal hotels. It actually increased the number of units that were required for certain buildings, and we can share that information for you just because setting out the hypotheticals makes it much clearer. But so it essentially kind of inhibited OSC from bringing litigation against certain buildings and hotel operators. So that's actually something that we've been trying to get reversed, but we haven't gotten a whole lot of traction on that.
Yeah, just trying to understand the problem. So is this an issue of landlords who are essentially shelving apartments they might otherwise rent and using it to get higher short-term income? Or is it more of an issue of tenants who are wittingly or unwittingly renting out their apartment for this use? You know, whatever. Is this? Can you just give me an idea of what's the larger percentage of who's doing what?
Yeah, it's definitely both, but as the AG's report, at least as was reported on, it said that the largest percentage is the commercial operators. It's not just individual tenants, and they supply more than a third of the units and generate a third of the revenue. So it really is the bigger operators. Third parties or bigger landlords, yes.
I think one of the stats that came out of the Attorney General's report was there are 124 hosts, right, which earned more than $60 million over the past 3 years. So those are not, people doing a one-off of renting their apartment when they're gone. This is people engaging in a business of renting it.
Can you just explain? I know this is both for statutory apartments and for market rate apartments, right? But explain, people say, and I represent CB2, this village and so, we have so many people here. But people say this is an avenue to take stabilized apartments off the market. Can you just explain a little bit of how this could take an apartment that is stabilized and take it out of stabilization? Where was that a vehicle?
We have landlords, when they're renting, these units for short-term periods, and if they're not registering these as someone living there, rent stabilized for legal regulated rent for 4 years, after that, they're gonna remove the unit
So
from us.
it's the
We know
4
that.
years.
That give them revenue for 4 years.
Okay,
Four
explain
years.
the 4-year issue.
The 4-year rule, which it's a little gray, but not very. So the 4-year rule means that, so landlords are required to register the legal regulated rent with the New York State Homes and Community Renewal every year, right? And if a landlord is overcharging a tenant, the law says that you can only look back over the prior 4 years to determine whether or not there was. So someone's rent could have been $500 in 2005, and in 2010 it jumped to $1,500, which was not legal, but because it happened prior to the 4 years, that's not challengeable by the tenant, the registration. And so there is some case law that allows the courts to look back prior years from the 4 years, but it is, there's an issue of having to look at fraud and what exactly is fraud and whether or not there was a scheme to remove the unit from rent stabilization. It gets a little complicated, but there is this 4-year rule. You can only look back 4 years in the rent registrations.
So landlord that has a stabilized apartment is violating the stabilization law by not registering anybody to that apartment. And 2, obviously, is now violating the new, what would you call it, the B&B law, the new.
The illegal hotels law.
Illegal hotels law by granting it for 30 days. So you get 2.
But I don't, follow up on that, I don't understand why, don't they have to report every year who is in the apartment?
The problem comes with enforcement,
They
don't check.
there's no penalty,
They don't check.
DCR is not.
So if there is somebody in the apartment but they don't report it though, this is illegal, that's the illegal hotel, I mean, that's where you would catch them?
No, that's more kind of in looking to how these units are removed from rent stabilization. The real issue is just that they're renting these units, these permanent residential units for less than 30 days. We don't necessarily.
What I'm trying to say is that from a rent stabilization standpoint, just forget about Airbnb. If there is somebody in the apartment paying X for whatever reason, aren't they supposed to report that? And if they are not reporting, then
The problem comes, Christine, I think, in that it relies on the tenant who is in occupancy to really call out and say, hey, that's not what I'm paying, or I didn't get my registration. There's no one from the DHCR side that's checking on that because there's just too many units and too few people, inspectors.
And there's also no law against holding a rent stabilized apartment vacant. The reason you wouldn't do that would be loss of income, but with Airbnb, so there's no rule against not renting out an apartment. The other part is it also sets up regulated tenants for a potential termination unwittingly. Both because they're illegally subletting, they're breaking their lease, their commercial use, and even the ones who do it legally within the apartment, I would worry that they could set themselves up for a commercial use holdover if they do a lot of this Airbnb stuff. But they don't necessarily understand that, and they could really, so that's another little area where we're worried about loss of housing.
It's also an incentive, right? If you can get $200 to $300 a night from renting from someone on a nightly basis, why are you gonna take $2,000 a month from a permanent tenant?
Yeah.
So that it gives you the incentive to really push that tenant out or to offer a buy or do whatever, but to vacate that apartment.
We're glad to have council member Mark Levine here.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you.
So you would like us to do some resolutions?
Well, I was thinking a couple
Let's
of
talk about specifics.
I think we could pass around something that you could look at, that you'd
Yes.
like enforcement. I think it helps if the Attorney General's office has produced a report, otherwise we don't have the facts. Because we don't have the staff to do that kind of effort. And then you could say that this is a big issue in my area, we'll try to get you some numbers, but in your area, you're gonna have them. And then, you know, you could look at it and see if it makes sense, and then you could have, somebody come talk from that agency, the AG's office, here, whatever you want, maybe a panel or something. This is a big Manhattan issue, by the way. It's everywhere, but it's a big Manhattan issue.
It's huge.
When we get our foil too, we'll boil it down to each of the districts too, so you can see the impact that it has in your area.
So you provide us
Yeah, we'll get to the resolution, and then you could play with it.
Okay.
Thank you. That's true.
Next, we're gonna turn to
Thank
Jim
you.
Karras in the EDC, but before that, Councilmember Mark Levine wanted to make a quick announcement.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. As you know, I chair the Parks Committee. I want to tell you about two exciting pieces of news from that world. One, you probably saw the coverage last week about a parks equity plan rolling out around the city. 35 small parks, mostly playgrounds, are going to get, in total, over $170 million of investment in capital renovations and some staffing. And I think 9 of the parks are in Manhattan. There are 3 on the Lower East Side, 3 in East Harlem, 2 in Central Harlem, 1 in Hamilton Heights, in my district. And these are mostly forlorn. You call them parks, some of them are just blacktop. And this is going to be a way to bring them back to life. They were selected on a really robust set of criteria, including a number of low-income people in the surrounding neighborhood, the density, the growth, predictions about how heavily they'll be used. And so the mayor deserves a lot of credit for pushing this forward, as the Parks Commissioner, and the City Council will put in a significant portion of the funding and was very involved in the plan, so that's all exciting.
How do the community boards get input into what's gonna be there?
I think it would be the same as any parks process. They're committed to community planning.
Okay.
And so all of you should make sure that your voice is heard through your local council member. But they're saying the right things now about getting community input, for sure. Secondly, there's about to be a fabulous new tool unveiled. You had a question, Christine? Yeah.
Yes, we had the experience in CB4 of mid-parks, so we are lucky. But very concerned that there are no, the environmental materials are not being used. Like, for example, if there is a playground and they use no blacktop. They don't use penetrable, I don't know how you can say, penetrable. Permeable. Right. They don't use any of those things. So we are making a big deal about all that. And even in the parks, they don't use that. And I think we should really.
You're right. In this case.
And this is really frustrating because this would be the perfect place, right? You have dirt there. Why do you have to put blacktop over dirt?
This all falls into the category of green infrastructure.
Right.
Tree pits are another wonderful way you can collect thousands of gallons of water in one tree pit.
Yeah, but when they are rebuilding the park in this day and age, they are not doing it.
In this case, in addition to the $130 million which the Parks Department is putting for capital, DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is putting in $37 million just for this green infrastructure.
Oh, great.
Precisely for this type of thing,
We can't
green
use that for
infrastructure.
any of the other things they are doing. I want that
Right.
now.
I'm pretty confident that in these 35 parks, you're gonna see a great investment into permeable surfaces and other stormwater collection.
Since you are overseeing the parks, I mean, that would be a great legislation to say from now on, that's the way it goes, because it's so absurd that we are building a park and over the dirt putting concrete.
I totally agree, totally agree.
Blowing my mind.
Just one more update before I have to leave, unfortunately. Many of you who have had recent capital improvements in your parks may have noticed that they're not very fast. And that council members complain that it often can take longer than the length of one 4-year term to get even a dog run renovated. And there's a great new tool that the Parks Department is about to unveil. In fact, it might even go live tomorrow, which will allow anyone in New York City to track every park's capital project in tremendous detail in a very user-friendly way. So you'll be able to see the start date, you'll be able to see where it is in each phase, from design to all the way through build-out. And it will include a nice user-friendly kind of progress bar, and you'll understand the budget for the project. You would think this would have already been available, but it has never been. And this has been a pet project of the new Parks Commissioner. It's now going to allow us to hold them accountable, and I've been pushing them, you'll be happy to know, Gail, on good open data to make sure that this is available in a XML format, a machine readable format, so that we can now look at stats on average. How long are Parks capital projects taking? Are we making progress towards speeding up that process? But this new Parks Tracker tool will be, I believe, unveiled tomorrow. I'm not sure about the exact timing of that, but watch for it soon. And then we should make sure that all your community board members know that they can look at any parks project in the city, in their neighborhood or elsewhere, and follow the progress throughout the life cycle of the project. That's it for me. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Councilman.
Got it.
Before Jim goes, if we can hear from the borough president.
I'm sorry, I have to go to CEC4 legislative, that is in East Harlem, and typical Gail, there were 5, I take the subway in the morning, just wanted you to know, and there were, no surprise to you, but on the East Side Express, I had to wait 5 trains, and I have 4 witnesses. Just so you know. There were so many people I ran into, as we always do. I remember one council member, I won't say who it is, his car broke down once, and he'd never been on the subway, I swear to God. I met so many constituents on the subway here. So there are lots of things that we're working on, and Aldrin will add and Joe will add, but certainly the trainings that Aldrin Bonilla has initiated are phenomenal, so he'll talk more about those. I don't think any other borough's doing them, but I want to thank him and obviously to get your input. Number 2, thanks to Athena Moore and others in the office, we have a wonderful African task force. It was a group of individuals from the community who have lots of issues. I think that boards 10, 9 know in particular some of them extremely well. It was just at the beginning of the Ebola crisis, and so as a result, October 30th, I believe at City College, we're going to have, I know Henrietta knows about it. I think to me the issue is there's lots of health discussion. I was worried about discrimination. I was around during the time that the Haitian community was accused of everybody in Haiti having AIDS. It was despicable, horrible, and I don't want that to happen to any other community. So I'm just saying we'll have lots of topics. We'll be working with the community board, but that is happening. There are many other issues that people brought up, language needs in the city agencies, making sure that young women, there are so many, but that's the one we're going to focus on right now. Second, third, senior task force, Jessica Mates is here. She's been leading that effort and can talk to you more about that, but the seniors, we had just seniors on it, not senior agencies, and they've come up particularly with the need to have a listing of all the higher education institutions in the borough of Manhattan, because they would like to go to classes and they'd like to use the library. And some of the academics do that. I know Fordham has a program, but we're going to see if we can do more investigation along those lines. And there are many other issues, as you can imagine. November 12th, location to be decided. I think today we have the chancellor, to her credit, is out and about, but she's going to have a forum with us. It'll be on the usual issues, but I'm going to add the issue of technology. The schools, we had all the new principals from Manhattan here at this table recently. And these are people who have lots of ideas. They were good, they were solid, but what is their biggest issue? The pipe coming into the building, the lack of quality software and hardware, particularly hardware. That stuff, I know, again, this is a topic that I know well. That stuff, 5 years is dead on arrival. So you have to keep replacing. So we want to work, others are interested in other things, but that's one of the topics I'm interested in. I think you'll hear more about open data, but this open data bill has really spurned a lot of interest. When we went to I go to the New York City tech meetups. Nobody else, I love those. There's 1,200 people and me. There's actually a chair that says Gail Brewer. I love this event. And a group that is trying to think of how heat and hot water can be calculated in real time based on the data from the open data portal. So there's lots of possibilities here. And there's a meeting discussion. I know Board 10 has had several technology forums, and there's one today with some folks who are also Silicon Harlem, who's really thinking about how to bring this issue to the Harlem community. I want to also thank the New York Police Department. For years, we couldn't get that data available, and the Transparency Working Group, which is some of the good government groups, some of the technology groups, and our staff have been meeting on a regular basis with staff at the New York Police Department, because they're trying to figure out how to safely, make their data available to the public through the open portal, through the open data portal. So I'm just saying these things are happening. We're going to look in the future at talking on a Mitchell-Lama task force, which has been requested, a disabled community task force, and maybe something more generally on immigration. So just so you know, those are some of the things that we're working on in a very small number of things, but Alvin, you might want to add.
Later on.
Okay, so you want to add?
Sure, just quickly, on the budget front, we'll be doing a lot over the next couple of months, getting ready for next year's city budget process. One of the areas where we always come to the community board for your assistance is on our capital grants process and letting folks know to apply to our office for capital funding. We're gonna try to expedite that process this year, start a little bit earlier, so that folks can come in and get it, and we can actually go out and see groups and see projects that are seeking funding. So we'll be sending out information about that in the next couple of days or weeks, hopefully, so look out for that. And in addition, just as a part of our good government efforts here, our budget unit has been reviewing all the old grants that have gone out of this office in the past, making sure the money's been given to the groups and it's being spent, and these projects are actually being built, and just monitoring where the money's going and making sure that these projects are going forward. So we'll continue to do that. If you're aware of projects in your community boards that have received funding from this office and you're wondering where that park is or where that school is, please contact us so that we can follow up the relevant agencies and make sure that the money's going to the appropriate places. So.
But on anything capital, we'll look at the suggestions that you've already made through your materials that you've already sent and published, and all district needs. So it's not a vacuum, but we'll keep the conversation fresh.
Just one thing, I was on one of those grant panels, and I thought that was so interesting, because I was on the health one. I had no idea all those organizations were in our community, and I had listed them, and actually there are organizations outside the community that basically service the community. And so I found that very helpful to know what's out there, so people will know that these services are out there for them, because the community board didn't know a lot of that.
Sure.
So I don't know if that's something you can share with the community board, so we can all know what agencies are serving, yes.
So the folks that apply for the MCGP process?
Exactly, just so we can know who's in our community, who services our community,
Right.
who are, they're outside our community. It's just, it's really helpful, so I have the help one.
We will put on,
That was very helpful.
we will do that. I thought we had every group that applies, we'll put up on the website.
That'd be
We won't know yet who's gonna get it, who's not gonna get it, but we'll have the list of who's applied.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other comments, questions for the board? Next, Jim Karras and the EDC.
Jim, you have to come over here.
Today is the Borough Board hearing pursuant to Charter Section 384B4 on 19 East Houston Street, which is a parcel in Community Board 2 on, it's the triangular parcel that's currently used as an MTA lot on the corner of East Houston and David?
East Houston and Broadway.
Broadway. And the back side is.
This is a fruit stand was for many years.
Yeah, that's right.
The big side.
And under the charter, when part of, when land that is owned by the city is going to be transferred to EDC, that goes before the Borough Board as well, and this is going through ULURP as well. EDC will explain procedurally where it is. The original application was for 3 floors of retail. It's sort of a small, oddly shaped lot, and the intent for much of the application looked like it was the store, the retail, and the office space above was sort of designed to be used as a flagship store. And we and the community felt that it wasn't really an appropriate site for a flagship store. So one of the concerns was the sidewalk. There's an subway stop right there. It actually comes out of the, into the proposed building in sort of a cutaway. So the things we worked on were getting the sidewalk widened, reducing the amount of retail space so it would not be a flagship store. And we, the Borough President's Office, in our quest for smaller stores and livelier streetscape, asked that it be divided into at least 2 stores. Where we are now is the sidewalk space is wide, the sidewalk is widened, the retail space is reduced from 3 floors to 2 floors, which takes away some of the lighting and display issues. There's also in the point that was worried that that would be a sort of gigantic display. There's not going to be display and lighting in there. However, it is remaining 1 store. So that's sort of where we are. EDC is going to explain sort of procedurally where they're at, where we're at. The Borough Board approves the terms and conditions of the disposition. So EDC is going to go through the
That was very good, you got all the
terms and
salient
conditions.
points.
Did I hit everything,
You got it all.
David?
Very good.
Okay.
Can everyone see this, or do we need to dim the lights at all?
Lights.
Alright, so, John.
So thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak. I'm John Corcoran. I'm a senior associate in our real estate transaction services group. And this is Lushina Warner, who manages all our government and community relations for Borough of Manhattan. So we are here, as Jim mentioned, to talk about 19 East Houston Street. And this presentation is purely informational. There's no vote that takes place today. We'll talk about the next steps in the process moving forward, but this really is an opportunity to provide you all with information and give you an opportunity to ask us, as well as the MTA and Madison Capital, any questions that you may have.
Excuse me, one other thing I wanted to, this is a public hearing, so after EDC's presentation, any members of the public will be able to speak.
So before going into any of the specific details about this site, I just want to give some background information about the initiative and how we got to this point. The city and MTA have been working for the past years on an initiative to reactivate some of their underutilized property. And the goal of this initiative really is threefold. On the one hand, we want to be able to reduce costs for the MTA in terms of carrying this property, and at the same time reactivate that property for local communities to put those properties back on the tax roll and help bolster local economic activity. And finally, to generate revenue, and that any revenue from the sale of these properties goes towards MTA's ongoing capital improvements. So these properties are owned by the city and under the master lease, leased to MTA for use. And we actually have, over the past few years, have reviewed a portfolio of over 4,000 plus properties with 2 criteria. One is properties that are no longer necessary for MTA's ongoing operations, and then also looking where there was good redevelopment potential. So we came to a short list of 7 properties for which EDC issued requests for proposals in March 2012. And this actually, 19 East Houston, is the only one in Manhattan. So you can see the timeline there in terms of receiving final submissions in September 2012 and selecting a development team in June 2013. In terms of the site in particular, 19 East Houston, as Jim described, is a triangular parcel. It's about 6,000 square feet and located on top of the Broadway Lafayette subways. It is bordered by Broadway, you can see there, and Crosby, and facing East Houston. This is a street side view, and so this is on Houston Street looking south towards the lot, and you can see there some of the fenced-in area. It's where current use is MTA stores its emergency response vehicles for Lower Manhattan in this location. So the vision of the proposal from Madison Capital is to construct a 6-story commercial building. The basement, first and second floors would be occupied by retail uses, and the floors above that would be office uses. I think the great news here, in addition to working with EDC on thinking about local hiring and other benefits, is public benefits listed here really in 3 major categories. First is just in terms of fostering economic growth. It takes a parcel that wasn't generating any tax revenue and puts it back on the rolls to contribute approximately $10.5 million, creates construction jobs and permanent jobs in the retail and office uses on an ongoing basis. In addition, it really improves the pedestrian experience, not just for people walking by, but also people accessing the subway station. So as part of the proposal, Madison has agreed to work with DOT to widen the sidewalk by 3 feet and reorient the subway entrance to allow for easier access and widened the stairs to improve the flow of pedestrians in and out of the station. And finally, add pedestrian bulb outs, which I'll show in a second, that will help with pedestrian crossings of the adjacent streets. The final category of public benefits is just is supporting MTA operations. So as I mentioned before, the sales proceeds go towards MTA for their capital budget. So this $25 million, almost $26 million, would go to much needed projects for capital improvements. And at the same time, the developer has agreed to provide a relocation site for the emergency response vehicles that are currently on site as part of the deal. To give you a more specific view here, on the top is the current conditions, and on the bottom, what we envisioned as part of the proposal. So you can see the expansion, the widening of the sidewalk at 3 feet, removing what's indicated in red here, the curb cuts and other obstructions, including bollards, telephone booth, and light posts to improve pedestrian flow. You can also see the reorientation a little bit in from the right side there of the stairs to the subway to provide a waiting area for people to enter and exit the subway without interfering with pedestrians walking by on the sidewalk. The bulb outs that I mentioned, one is pictured here all the way on the right-hand side, would be extending the projection of the sidewalk into the street there to extend it farther to the left to provide more space there. And then not pictured here would be another bulb out on the left-hand side on that corner, subject to working with DOT on how exactly that would be configured. So with that description of the project, I just wanted to close by talking about the next steps moving forward. As part of the 384B4 process, the process we need to go through in order to dispose of property to EDC and then eventually to the development team. Today is the first step, which was the informational presentation. The next steps would be going to Community Board 2, which we hope to do next month, to give a similar presentation and an opportunity to ask questions, and then finally reconvene this body or come to the meeting in December for a vote. At the same time, as Jim mentioned, the ULURP process has been ongoing over the summer, and the actions that would be associated with that would be the disposition of property, allowing retail use below the second floor, and then also just working with the height regulations to make the new building equivalent to the existing building next door in terms of matching the height. So with that, I'd love to give you an opportunity to ask me as well as my colleagues any questions you may have.
I just want to make a statement, and I want to thank, this was really a real case study. I'm David Borough. This is a real case study of government agencies in terms of MTA, EDC, working with the community board, local community members working with the developer and their team, and our elected officials, Margaret, Councilmember Chin was very helpful, as was the Borough President's Office. And I just want to say, this was really, people worked on this a long, long time from once we first saw it. And, demands were made and where accommodations could be made, I thought they were made. So I want to congratulate and thank everybody who participated in this. And I think this is something that we are now at CB2 happy to move forward with.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Yes,
Question.
Christine and then Vicky.
So you said you had reduced the number, the size of the store, but I see there still, I don't understand how.
You made from Councilor Urchin's office. So one of the sticking points that we worked with the community board on was the concern about the size of the retail.
Right.
Originally, there was actually a 4-part application. They were applying for retail over 2,000 square feet, and that part of the ULIP was actually withdrawn in response to community objections, in addition to an agreement to restrict retail to second floor and below. Originally, the proposal was to have 3 floors of retail
Oh,
plus
I
the
see.
side.
Yeah, okay. But it's still a large store.
Well, I mean, it's under the.
Well, so it's being broken in half.
It's under 10,000 square feet, so they're no longer applying for the so-called large retail.
And the price, the proceeds that go to the MTA, is that after the cost of all the improvements you're going to make? The developer.
Yeah, it's separate. That's just
So
in terms of the
The
land.
developer has agreed
land
to pay
sale.
for the widening
And
of the sidewalk.
Okay.
And stuff
The
like that.
developer will pay for
And
other
finally,
improvements.
I see that all the Conedison grids are occupying a fairly large portion of the sidewalk, and I don't see any trees planted. Ideally, you want the Conedison grids to be inside the building, and so that because what you're doing is extending the sidewalk, but reusing it for Coned grid, and people don't walk on Coned grids. So from a pedestrian standpoint, it's not a good sidewalk if you have a Coned grid on it. So I would hope that you're going to take your Coned grids and put them inside the building, and then plant trees in front of it.
I don't know if the MTA wants to speak at all to the engineering. I think
It's
that,
not MTA, it's Coned.
well,
No, it's
there's-
our-
it's our event, it's our grade.
it's actually-
Oh, these are your vents, but I thought
Vegetation
now
by
the
the
vents are being
subway
done, if you have, I mean, I thought the new system was not to do vents with grids.
Well, this is, as part of the development process, the developer is actually moving the grates from one location. The grates are now inside the parking lot you saw, and
Yeah.
now being relocated to the site.
Exactly, so what you're doing is really taking all the space. So the point is that.
We're
the grid-
working with community board too, that's why the sidewalk is being extended.
We extended, it's a very heavily used sidewalk.
My point, exactly my point. So extending it means like you think you are getting sidewalk, but you're not. You're not getting sidewalk because the grid is, you are getting the grid put on the sidewalk, which is a takeaway from the public. So
Well,
I
those
think.
issues are just related in the sense that, we worked with the developer to think about relocating the grates to the sidewalk. And the community board raised that concern that if you're gonna relocate the grates, that can impact, the pedestrian flow. And so the agreement that we came to, working with DOT, was that we would be able to widen the sidewalk 3 feet. And we would have widened it more if we could, but based on what we heard from DOT.
So
that
maybe
was
what
the
you want to
maximum.
do is put the grid in a way that in between the grids you can have trees, because what you are doing is creating a long facade with no trees whatsoever, which is 8th Avenue all over again, which is ugly and very, very unpleasant for pedestrians. So I think relocating the grid is an issue.
What are we looking for?
Next, we have a comment and question from Vicky.
I just wanted to know in December, is this a vote by just Board 2 or is vote by all of us?
Jim?
Just Board 2.
It's Board 2
I would
and
assume.
Manhattan.
And the council, and the electeds,
council
right,
elected.
okay.
Gigi?
Whoever can do this, comment briefly on the fate of the vendor that used to have a business there.
Yeah, I think, so that vendor has a month-to-month license, and I'm not,
Heard about the little people.
yeah, maybe the MTA.
Look cheap for that.
They have the license.
The fruit vendor has agreed to leave the site. They have been held over for over 3 years. They essentially have no legal rights, but we allowed them to stay.
So maybe a fruit vendor was a good
And
idea.
Excuse me?
Maybe a fruit vendor was part of
That's up
what-
to the developer in terms of what, you know.
But the
some of
developers,
these
the,
retailers-
excuse me, I'm Christina with the EDC, the vendor did sign a stipulation agreeing to relocate, he has another location, and he does have a month-to-month lease, and he's known about this for a long time and has agreed to relocate.
Right, so, okay, so I just wanna throw it out there, I guess if there are any supportive services around relocation, et cetera,
They have to have
look into
another
that.
business, they have
Oh,
another
okay.
business to go to, it's not like they have nowhere to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm thinking more about the community which is around there, which is relying on that vendor.
Any other questions, comments?
Anybody who's shopping there, so.
You wanna say something, Jim?
I don't know if there's anyone here from the public who'd like to speak on this, but now is an opportunity. Okay.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll have a report us from community board. We'll start with community board 1.
Hi, I'm Susan Cole, and I'm representing Catherine Hughes. I'm a member of community board. I only have 3 items today. One is that we are looking for some help from the borough president. We have a resolution around the reconstruction of Route 9A, and there is some problem with bikes and ramps and pedestrians, which seems to be throughout the city, but it's very narrow down there. So we'll present you we will have a resolution, but nobody seems to be taking charge because we have the Battery Park City Authority, we have the state, we have the city, we have the Department of Transportation, and nothing seems to be going on there. That's okay, it's all right. And so we have a resolution which we will hope to pass in November, and we will because this crossing at Liberty Street is a problem. Okay, the second one is South Street Seaport. No update. That speaks for itself. Then we have an issue around 346 Broadway and 108 Leonard. And they're the same building with 2 different entrances. And there's a landmark and a planning issue, and we're going to draft a resolution again on the landmarking issue, which is the exterior as well as some issues on the interior of the building, which they promised us certain space, and they were nigging on it, and when they brought up the planning, they didn't talk, they came as 108 Leonard, and they didn't come as 346 Broadway and 108 Leonard. So they were a little disingenuous, and we're very suspect of them, okay? That's it, basically.
Community board 2.
Thank you. We have a bunch of issues. We've been working with the Community Board 4. We're getting a bid in the meatpacking district that spans both our boards. We recently went to the interagency meeting. There's some controversy surrounding it. We're trying to work out those things. But basically, when we work out a few details, I think we're moving forward with this bid. So it's going to actually come to us in November. In answer to your question. And the other thing that's going on is the air right transfers from Hudson River Park that affects boards 1 to a lesser extent, but board 2 to a larger extent, and board 4 to a larger extent. We have the famous St. John's building, which is going to be the largest project in Greenwich Village for this next decade. It's going to be at the end of the day, 1.7 million square feet, and there'll be a combination of affordable housing, senior housing, market rate housing, and hopefully other kinds of things that we're still working on. And this month we're having a major election at CB2, and it's the first time.
I heard something about that.
Yeah,
What's that?
just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
And for the first time since I've been connected with CB2, which is a while now, we are having a competitive election with 3 people running to replace me, and 3 people running for, 2 people running for the first vice chair, and 3 people running for the second vice chair.
Oh my.
I don't know how it is in other boards, but we never, ever have competitive elections. You know, it's always.
Oh, we do.
You do? It's always sorted out beforehand. and, you know, people figure out if they're gonna win or lose and stuff aside. So, some of the candidates have hired professional lobbying for them.
Expensive media market.
They've hired media consultants. That's going on, so we'll see what happens. And I really don't know who's doing it. It is really.
But three is a lot.
Three's a lot.
Yeah, usually have two.
Right.
They need 3 people to replace.
Community board, community board 3?
Sure, so, we had residents at 170 to 174 East Second Street come before the CD3 Land Use Committee for 2 months, with alleged kind of, tenant, landlord, quality of life, construction, harassment, etc., the whole shebang sort of issues. And in coordination with the Borough President's office, Rosie Mendez's office, and the community board, we were able to meet with, it's a Kushner property. We were able to meet with Jared Kushner and his staff and really work on what we think is an excellent plan around transparency and accountability to address some of the concerns laid out by the residents. So we are hopeful that that will be addressed. And then with the award in our kind of CD3 and CD6 around the rebuild by design, that is moving forward around with the Mayor's Office of Recovery and Resiliency, along with 4 other government agencies that will be coordinated for this $365 or $45 million award. Sandro and I have been talking about shortly forming a CD3, CD6 joint task force to work with all of the relevant agencies, you know, as a vehicle to keep the community board updated and kind of be a stakeholder in this process moving forward. It is, according to our meeting yesterday, an expedited process, which doesn't sound so expedited when they said that they want to have shovel in the ground in about 3 years, but that is expedited. And so we are very excited about the large scale kind of improvement along the East River waterfront.
That's good.
Thank you. Community board 4, Christine?
Yes, so we have, maybe some of you know, we have not had, our district manager has moved on to become the executive director of the Business Improvement District in Hudson Yards. So we've been interviewing and probably will have a vote on a new district manager in November. We have published a best practices for chair. This is a working group we started 6-7 months ago. And so we are getting all our chairs educated on that, with what to do, and it's really a collection of all historical chairs, and everybody knows what to do, and I think it's useful.
We have a chair's handbook.
Oh, okay, well, that's the same thing, right. We had a major win, which is the Lincoln Tunnel, the New Jersey Transit and Port Authority have changed the pattern of the way they organize the buses at night. And so instead of having 2 miles of queues of buses on 10th Avenue, now we don't have that line. Instead of that line starting at 4, it's now starting at 6. So we have 2 hours of relief there, and this is kind of a major accomplishment for us. We have passed the Southwest Chelsea extension rezoning. It's now going to city planning, but everybody is in agreement, so this is really good. It extends the rezoning to 15th Street. And I want to mention that this month or next month is the renewal of the phone booth contract. And I know that some of your staff, Will Colgrove, is still working on it. We're still working, making sure it's happening the way we want, but I don't have a warm feeling yet that it is happening the way we want. And finally, we continue to have
major, issues of quality of life, with bars, with restaurants, and with construction and after-hours variance. And I don't know whether there is a legislation going on for after-hours variance, but I mean, it's really an issue. And it doesn't feel like we have any handle over that, not only from the construction company, but from the DOT, which is doing repairs in the street at night.
And even when our city councilman demands it, the DOT often
Right.
ignores it.
So
All of us.
Right.
Yes.
So I think there has to be a discussion with DOT of, no later than X, like no later than midnight, or even for the after hours variance, no later than midnight, because this is ridiculous. Not only you have the whole construction, you have the traffic in the day, and then at night, you have the construction in the street. So it's like a continuum. And they do it also over the weekend, and Con Ed does it over the weekend.
Oh,
So
yes.
our whole neighborhood is a non-stop noise, construction noise, and as soon as that stops, then the bar starts. So it's really completely overwhelming, and
We should revisit that as well.
I mean, this is just not acceptable that DOT would be concerned of closing one lane of traffic. I mean, what the heck? Nothing moves anyway. So what's the big difference? Rather than doing everything at night when nobody can sleep. It's very very annoying, and especially for people which are in the zone where everything is in construction.
American.
Community Board 5?
Speaking of development, we had a really kind of quiet month for change, but we had a group of kind of very raucously residents come to us to save the Park Lane Hotel on Central Park South. And we had dealt with a developer previously about, I would say, 10 months ago, who wanted to buy the Park Lane, transfer air rights, and we had approved the transfer of those air rights, and we turned down the landmarking of the Park Lane Hotel, as have other landmarks preservation organizations. So that was one thing. And then the second thing is really interesting and important, because with all the development, I'm sure all of you have seen this, that's going on in the city, and dealing with developers has been very difficult. And as you know, we are now, and have been, in the process of working with SL Green on the parcel that's on the corner of 42nd Street, right across from Grand Central, and Vanderbilt Avenue. And they came to us in the latter part of the spring with their building. We approved it with conditions, whether it was harmonious with Grand Central, which was the reason why they had to come to us. And we gave them a number of conditions. They said they would come back to us, and they did. They met with us any number of times and made changes based on our recommendations. And then when we found that they were getting, this is going to be a huge building, I'm sure all of you have read about it, and we were concerned as to what we were getting, or what they're getting for the 200, they're saying that it's costing them $210 million in subway improvements and infrastructure. And we never were able to understand how that breaks down, what does it mean, how does this impact other buildings that might be coming up with the same request. And so we requested a breakdown of that at our last meeting with them, and lo and behold, a month later, they met with us 2 nights ago. It was the most transparent, the most out there information for our meeting with the CEO, with all of the higher, the higher up people with SL Green. It was incredible. I mean, we were all absolutely blown away. I think it's going to be online, but the breakdown is so informative, and so, which was what we were concerned about. How much of it is required beyond what the building itself requires. and we were given all of that. There wasn't one question that was asked that they did not take their time and answer for us. I mean, it was a joy to behold, and I tell you, I didn't even realize it. And I would just like to say publicly that it is such a pleasure to work with a developer like that. Because we have had difficulties, and I'm sure you all have along the lines. working. It's really impressive, so.
Thank you, Fran. Community Board 6?
Just to add to her presentation, we also have been given a presentation by SL Green because Community Board 6 has a little portion on it that deals with the subways. And so they came and did a PowerPoint presentation on that. And I think Sandra and maybe Terrence did a walkthrough with you also on that. So that's one of the issues that's before us also, One Vanderbilt. And they were very informative for us. The other issues, though, that are before us are primarily dealing with waterfront access. The number one is the Skyport. EDC came before us with a presentation which was multiple in its phases, and we couldn't support all of it. The first part dealt actually with repairs because of Sandy, and structural repairs to the marina, et cetera, and we really supported that. But then there were capital improvements that they were making to the Skyport, which didn't fit in with our 197A plan. And we told them that we wish they had come to us earlier and sooner to get more feedback from us, and also specifically from Waterside Plaza, which is affected by the changes which they want to make. And we also would like it to mesh in with whatever's going on with Stuyvesant Cove and the Blue Way and the Big U all at the same time. We don't want it done piecemeal, you know, so that we have an idea of what's going to go on there. So we did pass a resolution that basically supported the changes that need to be made because of Sandy. We were not supportive of the other capital, which involved, for example, increasing the size of the marina such that they would be able to bring in seaplanes. Matter of fact, a larger seaplane that come in now. Yeah, we have 3 seaplanes that come in single engine, and they dock, 3 dock there.
a little pontoon.
But they want to add more docking so that they can bring in twin engine plane, which is a larger plane.
The noise.
And that doesn't fit in with our view of the waterfront. To add to that, the other issue right there, right next to it is Stuyvesant Cove, and Councilman Garotnik has allocated over the fiscal year 2014 and 2015, $1.5 million for Stuyvesant Cove for us to create a kayaking venue on the waterfront. And we're looking for location, we're looking to align that with whatever goes on with the seaport. We're looking for them to do like plumbing and stuff like that that would add to that situation. So, and Councilman Garotnik was looking more towards also adding docking for historic ships so that we could bring historic ships there. And really make it a venue where people come down to the waterfront and access the waterfront. We have one other problem, which is an ongoing problem. It's not seafront, but it's the sanitation garage, which is scheduled to go on to 25th Street, right off First Avenue. That would be right in the heart of all of the medical institutions that we have there, and obviously we don't think that's an appropriate place for the siting of a sanitation garage, but we understand that they want to bring the trucks that service us back to our community. They're presently on the west side. They want them to bring them back over the east side. But added into that garage, they want to build a garage that also services 8 and 8A, which means it would be bringing in approximately 170 some trucks into that area. And basically, in terms of our 197A, that is a medical corridor. that would be plopped right in the middle of the Veterans Hospital and Bellevue Hospital. It would be sited right off the exit of the FDR. And it really would, the traffic study that they did excluded 23rd Street, 24th Street, and started at 25th Street, which meant that they really didn't do a traffic study. Because if you go to First Avenue and 23rd Street on any given morning, you can't get from the FDR to Madison Avenue within 15, 20 minutes. We have all of the major buses that come in from the outer boroughs. And so we have put together a study, and we're preparing to offer alternatives to that particular issue. Hopefully we will have it done within the month, and we'll be ready when it's time for certification, because it hasn't been certified yet.
Thank you for that. Community Board 7?
Yes, the big issue up there is central parking, car-free parking, the push to ban vehicles. I don't know what that will do to the mayor's plan to put the electric limousines on there. I agree. So that's a big debate. We also have a task force working on making the playgrounds more accessible to handicapped children. Parks Department and Parks Committee is working on that. We're going to start live streaming of our full board meetings next month, which I'm not sure I like that idea.
Oh, it's great. Really is.
Is it online or is it no one lives in Manhattan?
Yeah.
It's
really good.
I'm guessing. I think it'll just. It'll just. Yeah, you do have it.
Just because you don't have enough.
I'm not sure how it's being streamed, but I'm sure that we'll be announcing it. Recently, we had a Columbus Avenue Street Fair, and I know there's a lot of debate about street fairs and stuff, but we had over 100,000 visitors. Members of the community board came out. We set up a table and we worked and stuff. We understand that it's an issue for some of the brick and mortar stores, but there's more restaurants than anything else on those streets. And they have a chance to shine on the street, to make the street better. So, and they're just very popular. I know there's a lot of debate on the street fair, but we like it. That's it.
Thank you. Community Board 10?
I'm sorry, can I just do 8 real quick, because
Okay.
Nick had to leave, but he had 2 things he just wanted to say really quickly, I'm sorry. And he wanted to read it to the record. One is that they are very concerned because there's a lot of organizations asking for the traffic study, that it's supposed to be on York Avenue and 80s to 90s, York to 2nd. Money was set aside in the MSK CUNY project, and it's being held up, and there's a huge need for it, so he was very concerned, and he wanted to just note that the VA is very concerned about the traffic study that's not happening, that should be happening. And the second thing he wanted just to announce to everyone is that they have disapproved a landmarks application that came in. It was from the Park Avenue Christian Church. It was a proposal for a large residential building, and the board deemed that it was not appropriate under landmark guidelines, and so they disapproved it. Just wanted to report on those things.
Thank you for that.
Sorry.
Community Board 10?
A couple of things. Actually, we have a big problem in New York City with the rats in general. And our former Borough President, Dr. Stringer, had a press conference on this Sunday about the audit that New York City, he did an audit, and the Department of Health and Sanitation basically shared that they didn't have enough resources. So he is looking at this. I'm not sure if he has already published his audit and distributed it, but it's something that everyone should look at, because we do have a really big problem, not just in Central Harlem, all of New York City, and rats are coming out during the day now. It's just that kind of thing, so that's something to look at. Okay, yeah. The other thing, I went to a meeting at the FBI headquarters first time last week. They actually invited the Muslim community in just to basically talk and get a better understanding, and they gave this whole PowerPoint about terrorists, and it was just amazing. And I know that was like not even a 1%, but it was really fascinating with me, just being there to see all of this and the different terrorist group, and they have different individuals who are working on these things in New York City. But they were just trying to really talk to the Muslim community, get a better community
understanding and working with them, and also to let them know of some of the things they need to look out for. And they were very concerned about the amount of young people who are basically participating, you know, in the websites and everything like that. I mean, they just had so much information. So I thought this was so fascinating because I've never been to the FBI headquarters less much.
How'd you find out about it?
They sent notices out. Yeah, they sent notices out, so it was really interesting. So I hope I'm on their list of to come back.
Only
you know.
that list.
So that list, yes, yes.
You are on the list.
By all means, thank you. The other thing we're really working in our community are the McCombs Branch Library has been a big, big issue in our community. And thanks to our borough president and all the data, we have an urban planner looking at the stats around this particular library to see just how many buildings, how many children, how many adults, and just where other libraries are placed so that we can help to accommodate this particular area with a library that will accommodate the people in that area. Going on, City College has something very interesting. They're just starting, and it's right next door to our community board office. They are creating somewhat of an incubator for their staff. So their staff can come in free of charge and use all these tools and resources to help them develop or establish business, of course, technology. And then it's my understanding, if something takes off, City College will get 10% of the revenues of this business. So it's just something new. The door is still locked and we can't wait for this to open, but it's for City College staff. It's like a place for them to come, an incubator, so that they can work and develop and create ideas and, you know, just do incredible things in the city of New York, I guess. But City College will get some of the take on their business if it takes off. The other thing, Borough President talked about Silicon Hall. Well, on the west side, I think it's in Community Board 9, we have that building where all of these technology companies and startups are coming into the community because of the lower rent, but that just seems to be the hub right now for, for technology in the community of Harlem. So one of the things we wanted to do was start working with these organizations and businesses so we can get more of our young people involved and learn what's going on, because it looks really complicated, because I'm still reading, trying to understand what do they do again, and all of these companies do different things. So we're trying to see how can we get this into our schools, or can we get tours into this building, so individuals, our young people, can start learning about all this data and technology in the future. So that's my report.
Thank you. Report outs from council member reps? Anyone? Announcements? Yes.
Well, the speaker, Ms. Melissa Marco-Verito, she's actually doing a No Poop Fairy campaign this Saturday at Thomas Jefferson Recreation in East Harlem. This is basically to teach pet owners to be responsible pet owners for their dogs and cats, specifically dogs, and the problem of, them not picking up after their dogs. We're also doing PB, and I believe some of you guys, council members, are also doing PB, so that's up in the forefront. And I have some flyers in regards to that, and I'll put them out before you guys leave. Participatory budgeting.
Oh, okay.
So that's, also up, and that's pretty much what we're doing right now.
Thank you for that. Any other announcements? The Borough President's Office, we have the Community Board Leadership Series. We very much encourage the chairs to get that information out to all your community board members. We also have the equal employment opportunity and diversity training that's mandatory for community board staff. So make sure that you get that out to your community board staff. We had a training yesterday with about 22 people, and we still have many more community board staff to go. So that's very important. We received 6 applications for the open data interns from community boards. So we're excited to be able to review those and then start assigning them during the month of November, which is only about 2 weeks away. So we're very excited about being able to provide you with that data and mapping support through these community board, through these open data core members. So we're very excited about that. At this point, we have a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Second? All in favor? All right, so thank you very much.